Spin-offs can be a great thing. You take a beloved TV show, carve off some of your favourite characters and let them have a life of their own. Seat has done just that. Cupra, the name previously given to their performance cars, is now a standalone brand. But will this spin-off be more of a Better Call Saul or a Joey? This is the Fomentor, the first car not to be based on an existing Seat model. So this has to set a template for everything we're going to expect from the Cupra brand. And that statement of intent starts right up front with that badge. To me, that is the most exciting and aggressive looking badge in the automotive world right now. To me, it looks like the face of the comic book character Spawn. Dark, brooding, aggressive. I mean, to you it might look like a guy with no head going like this, but you know, to each their own. That aggressiveness extends all the way across the front. I love these lights and how they echo the badge's angular nature, and these little diamond details really add to it. The small touches which you could say might be lifted or borrowed from brands like Lamborghini, these little flick ups remind me a little bit of the Aventador without necessarily looking like it copies it. Once you get down the side, things start to calm down a little bit. I'm not a big fan of the contrasting colour on these wheel arches. It gives it a bit of a Volvo cross-country feel. It's not necessarily a dig, but not my particular choice. But this side mirror looks like it's been sculpted by the air running over it. I'm a big fan of that. Roof rails on a car are never usually something that look great, but somehow in this car it ties it all together. It somehow adds to the aggressiveness, even though it's a fully practical addition to the car. The side itself gives it a slight air of anonymity, but as soon as you get to this rear three-quarter, that aggressiveness is back with this rear haunch. The C-pillar area reminds me a little bit of the Nissan Juke, which isn't a dig. I really like that angle of the Juke. And coming around the back, this Cylon-esque light bar, side to side across the width, added to that aggressive badge there on carbon fibre, really gives it a very special look. This car looks so good from so many different angles, it's quite a surprise. Having seen pictures of it, I wasn't sure how I'd feel getting up to it for the first time, but considering that this car really has to build the Cupra brand up from the ground, they've done a really good job. Outside of our car community, not that many people are going to recognize the Cupra name, and that badge is brand new to all of us. So this car has got a lot to do in terms of building a reputation, and so far it's off to a great start.
Great looks mean nothing though if it can't back it up on the road, and on paper, the Fomentor seems to stack up pretty well. This version gets 306 horsepower from a 2-litre 4-cylinder engine and 295 pounds-feet of torque. 0 to 62 will come in 4.9 seconds. If those numbers sound pretty sporty to you, then you're right, because they are pretty damn close to the stats of the Porsche 718 Cayman.
So what do all those numbers add up to in the Fomentor? Well, it's not the largest car in the world, so 306 horsepower is enough to make it shift. The road driving mode is sedate and easy to live with, comfortable. The adaptive suspension gives you a compliant ride. It's not too stiff, it's not super sports car-y, unlike what the exterior design might suggest. It's fine, it's comfortable, and if you're transporting your kids or just going on a run to the shops, that mode is going to be absolutely fine. However, this is Carfection. I don't really want to focus on that mode. I want to tell you what this car is like when this Cupra is driven like a Cupra. And for that, you use the Cupra button to select Cupra mode.
In Cupra mode, the true character of this car is revealed, and all of a sudden it transforms from a car that you can live with to one that you actually want to drive. And you can sense that right from a standing start.
Cupra symbol up on the screen. Let's give it a go. That's a sub 5 second 0 to 60 time, which isn't to be sniffed at in a car this size. The adaptive dampers have stiffened up Not too much that it's rattling the teeth out of your head. You can still feel the car roll around a little, but that new stiffness does give you a better feeling of how the car's sitting on the road, especially through the corners, which is good because although the steering weightens up slightly, it's still a touch on the numb side. The throttle sharpens up to make it feel a lot more responsive, and the biggest difference for me is in the brakes. Even between the Sport mode and Cupra mode, you really feel a difference in how immediate the response is from that brake pedal. For me, this is the only driving mode I would want to have this car in most of the time. Save for when you're driving the kids to school or picking up a heavy load of shopping, Cupra mode is where it's at.
The smaller engine version is available in a 6-speed manual, but this top-spec model has a 7-speed DSG gearbox.
You can shift yourself, but the Fomentor really dissuades you from doing it with these plasticky paddles which feel numb and lifeless, but leave the car to shift for itself and you get plenty of performance out of that gearbox. One small downside is the engine note, which sounds a little bit artificial because, well, it is. You're especially aware of that when you do some aggressive downshifts and you can actually hear the real noise of the engine start to come through. It's a quiet engine, it's well insulated, but it really sounds completely different from the engine note that gets pumped into the cabin. If that's not something you focus on, the engine sound it pumps in isn't unpleasant, it just feels a bit fake. I could do without it. But the performance behind it is fun. For a car of this size, and it feels a lot bigger when you're in it. It shifts really well. Now at 40,000, it's not competing with many fast SUVs. It's quite competitively priced for the amount of fun that you can have with it. And that driving fun, that's really what you're paying for. In combination with the really aggressive and fun styling, this makes a great package.
For context, at around £40,000 you could also get an entry-level Alfa Romeo Stelvio, a small SUV that looks brilliant and handles well, but the Fomentor has 1.5 times as much power. For the Stelvio to comfortably beat the Fomentor in performance, you'd need the Quadrifoglio version, which would set you back twice as much. You could get an entry-level Porsche Macan for a little bit more than the Fomentor costs with all the prestige of that badge, but you'd be getting a car that's almost 2 seconds slower to 62. For your money, in terms of looks and performance, the Fomentor feels like a bargain.
The styling of the badge and the exterior looks of this car suggest it's going to be, at the very least, fun to drive, put a smile on your face, and when you want to, propel you towards the horizon at some pace. And it does. Driving this car over the week that I've had it, the overwhelming feeling that I have of it is that it's a fun car. It's not a sports car that happens to be an SUV that has had extra practicality bolted onto it. This, at its heart, is a conventionally practical car, but it's been shaped and sculpted in a way to make it look fun and tweaked under the hood to make it feel fun. Now, coming through a corner, you're not exactly exploding out with the most amount of pace. In fact, if you treat this car like a momentum car, that's when you get the most out of it. But it's fun to explore a car that has some character, even if there is a little bit of fakery in things like the sound. There is a complete trust in how this car is going to get you around the corner. You never feel like you're going to be in trouble. And even driving it as close to 10/10 as you can get this thing, you're still not going to feel threatened. But if you're just out for a good time, this car, it can give it. So how does the Fomentor act as an ambassador for Cupra, entering into the world as a new brand? Well, this statement of intent right now with this car suggests how much fun they're going to focus on having. The Seat brand will still have plenty of room to accommodate the more sedate cars for people who don't necessarily want to have that performance element to their cars. But the Cupra brand looks like it's going to pack some fun. Between the exterior styling that is definitely making some statements, whether or not you like them or not is up to you, but it looks distinctive. It drives in a way that puts a smile on my face, and even though it's not the fastest small SUV out there, it's certainly enough to pique my interest. Add to that a lovely cabin experience and enough tech to keep me occupied, and I'm a happy bunny. There are SUVs with higher performance that have more luxurious cabins, more tech, and that look nicer on the exterior. But at this price point, I think the Cupra strikes a very interesting prospect. So the question remains, was spinning off Cupra as a standalone brand a good idea for Seat or not? Well, despite the fact that there have always been fast Seats, and Seat has had success in motorsport, in touring cars and in rallying, there's always been a brand association with Seat that hasn't always been associated with speed and performance and driving prowess. Spinning out Cupra allows this new brand to start from scratch, build up from the ground up a new reputation unassociated with Seat that tells people this car is going to be fun to drive. It starts with the badge in my mind, which begins to suggest that that's what you're going to get. And this car, well, I think it keeps that promise. There's enough performance here to make a family car feel like a fun thing to take out for a drive. If this is an ambassador for what Cupra can be in years to come, well, I'm extremely excited to see what the future holds.